What if the most terrifying monster in Greek mythology was once a queen, driven to madness by the gods themselves? Lamia, a radiant Libyan queen, caught the eye of Zeus, but when Hera discovered their affair, she unleashed a curse beyond imagination. Hera murdered Lamia's children. Consumed by grief, Lamia transformed into a half-serpent demon. Cursed to hunt and devour the children of others, a monstrous reflection of her own unbearable loss. But Lamia's legend evolved. She became a siren of the night, luring men to their doom with her beauty. Was she a victim of the gods? Or a warning about the dark power of a woman scorned? From Keats' haunting poetry to horror films and RPGs, Lamia's story endures because it's not just myth. It's a tale of motherhood, vengeance, and how pain can twist love into something monstrous. Would you pity her or fear her? The line between victim and monster has never been thinner. Lamia, a figure of profound sorrow and terrifying monstrosity, occupies a unique and enduring position within the pantheon of Greek mythology. Primarily recognized as a child-eating demon, her narrative is far more intricate, steeped in divine injustice and a transformation born of unimaginable grief. Her story traces a compelling evolution from a beautiful queen to a terrifying entity, reflecting a complex interplay of human suffering and supernatural wrath. The examination of Lamia's myth reveals a narrative that is not static, but remarkably adaptable, shifting its form and purpose across millennia. This fluidity, evident in her changing roles from a queen to a demon, a child-eater to a seductress, and even in her varied physical manifestations, from a distorted human to a serpentine hybrid, underscores the dynamic nature of mythological storytelling. Such adaptability allowed her legend to serve diverse cultural and didactic purposes over time, ensuring its continued relevance. The enduring presence of Lamia in various forms demonstrates that myths are not merely historical accounts, but living narratives that evolve to reflect and shape societal needs, fears, and moral lessons, thereby maintaining their profound cultural significance. This video will trace Lamia's mythological origins, detail the events leading to her monstrous transformation, explore the evolution of her terrifying characteristics, analyze the deep symbolic interpretations embedded within her myth, and finally, examine her pervasive and varied portrayals in modern literature, film, television, and video games. Lamia, a figure of profound sorrow and terrifying monstrosity, occupies a unique and enduring position within the pantheon of Greek mythology. Primarily recognized as a child-eating demon, her narrative is far more intricate, steeped in divine injustice and a transformation born of unimaginable grief. Her story traces a compelling evolution from a beautiful queen to a terrifying entity, reflecting a complex interplay of human suffering and supernatural wrath. The examination of Lamia's myth reveals a narrative that is not static, but remarkably adaptable, shifting its form and purpose across millennia. This fluidity, evident in her changing roles from a queen to a demon, a child-eater to a seductress, and even in her varied physical manifestations, from a distorted human to a serpentine hybrid, underscores the dynamic nature of mythological storytelling. Such adaptability allowed her legend to serve diverse cultural and didactic purposes over time, ensuring its continued relevance. The enduring presence of Lamia in various forms demonstrates that myths are not merely historical accounts, but living narratives that evolve to reflect and shape societal needs, fears, and moral lessons, thereby maintaining their profound cultural significance. This report will trace Lamia's mythological origins, detail the events leading to her monstrous transformation, explore the evolution of her terrifying characteristics, analyze the deep symbolic interpretations embedded within her myth, and finally, examine her pervasive and varied portrayals in modern literature, film, television, and video games. The genesis of a monster, Lamia's classical origins. Lamia's tragic journey begins with her identity as a queen of ancient Libya, universally depicted as a woman of captivating beauty. While her regal status remains consistent, her parentage is subject to variation across classical sources, indicating a lack of a single, definitive origin story in antiquity. Some accounts name her as a daughter of Poseidon, while others identify her as the offspring of King Belus of Egypt and Akiro, or simply Belus in Libya. A less common but notable tradition even attributes her parentage to Hecate. These variations underscore the organic development of myths, where details could shift while the core narrative remained. The catalyst for Lamia's tragic downfall is her fateful affair with Zeus, the king of the gods. This illicit union is a consistent element across virtually all classical accounts. Such a transgression inevitably provokes the fierce wrath and relentless jealousy of Hera, Zeus's wife, who emerges as the primary architect of Lamia's suffering. The consistent portrayal of Hera's vengeful actions as the catalyst for Lamia's transformation and torment across all classical sources highlights Hera's archetypal role as the jealous divine consort. This recurring motif underscores a significant theme in Greek mythology: the profound and often arbitrary, destructive power of the gods, particularly when human divine boundaries are crossed, and the severe consequences faced by mortal women caught in divine disputes. This element serves not only as a narrative device, but also as a commentary on the perceived injustices inherent in the divine order. Hera's revenge primarily targets the children Lamia bore from her union with Zeus. The precise method of their demise varies in different accounts. Hera is said to have either kidnapped and hidden them, killed them outright, or, in some of the crueler versions, forced Lamia to kill them herself. The profound loss of her children is the direct and overwhelming cause of Lamia's descent into madness and her subsequent transformation into a child-devouring monster. Driven by this grief and an overwhelming envy for other mothers, she begins to hunt and devour other children, a grim reflection of her own devastating loss. The earliest mentions of Lamia in classical Greek texts already establish her core monstrous function. Ancient commentaries on Aristophanes' piece describe her as a female demon who devoured children. Intriguingly, Aristophanes' plays also hint at a possible gender ambiguity, with a reference to Lamia's testicles. An unusual detail that found its way into later 17th century interpretations. Flavius Philostratus's Life of Apollonius of Tyana further elaborates, describing Lamia as a fiend capable of assuming the form of a beautiful woman to seduce and then devour young men. This particular depiction proved highly influential for subsequent literary interpretations. Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics refers to a beastly, woman-shaped life form that tears open the bellies of pregnant mothers and devours their fetuses. With an anonymous commentator linking this gruesome description to Lamia, Diodorus Siculus offered a more rationalized account portraying Lamia as a Libyan queen driven mad by grief who ordered her troops to kidnap and kill children, her beauty having given way to a bestial appearance due to her savageness. He even rationalized her removable eyes as a metaphor for her drunken state, implying her inability to oversee her citizens' conduct. These early portrayals, particularly her role as a demon who devoured children, indicate that the core monstrous function was present from the outset. The rationalized accounts, such as Diodorus Siculus's, represent an early attempt to ground the monstrous in human behavior, making it more comprehensible and perhaps more potent as a cautionary tale. Her widespread use as a boogeyman figure by Athenian mothers further solidifies her role as a tool for social control. This reveals that Greek myths, even those featuring grotesque monsters, often served practical didactic functions aiming to enforce social norms, particularly concerning children's behavior and the dangers of the unknown, while also reflecting a societal need to rationalize supernatural phenomena, the curse and transformation, physical and psychological metamorphosis beyond the initial devastating loss of her children. Hera inflicts further profound torment upon Lamia. A significant aspect of this curse is the inability to sleep, forcing Lamia into a perpetual state of grief over her lost children, denying her any respite from her sorrow. Some accounts even suggest Hera compelled Lamia to devour her own offspring, intensifying the horror of her fate. In a complex display of pity, or perhaps a continuation of his ambivalent relationship with her, Zeus bestows certain gifts upon Lamia. The most distinctive of these is the ability to remove and reinsert her eyes. This power is often presented as a means to alleviate her sleeplessness and constant grief. She would pluck them out and keep them in a jar during the day, regaining her sight at night to resume her monstrous hunt. Zeus also grants her the power of prophecy, though this gift is explicitly noted to intensify her anguish rather than alleviate it. Furthermore, Lamia is endowed with shape-shifting abilities, allowing her to transform, often into a beautiful woman, primarily to facilitate her predatory behavior and lure victims. The nature of Zeus's interventions, while seemingly benevolent, paradoxically perpetuates her tragic existence. These gifts do not offer genuine liberation from her suffering. Instead, they enable her monstrous acts and deepen her torment, highlighting a common theme in Greek mythology, where divine interventions, even those seemingly intended as help, often have unintended or paradoxical consequences for mortals, deepening their suffering or transforming them into tools of fate. This also underscores the limited power of even the king of the gods against Hera's relentless wrath. Lamia's monstrous transformation is not merely behavioral, but also profoundly physical. Initially, her face distorts into a nightmarish mask, due to her cruel acts and savageness. Some descriptions even mention her facial features possibly mimicking those of a shark. Over time, her appearance evolves to include more pronounced monstrous features, particularly a serpentine or snake-like lower body, rendering her a half-woman, half-snake creature. This serpentine quality is depicted in various artistic representations and is believed by some commentators to be firmly traceable to antiquity. This physical transformation, explicitly linked to her monstrous actions and savageness, suggests a causal relationship where her internal madness and gruesome deeds externally manifest as physical deformity. The gradual acquisition of snake-like features further connects her to ancient symbols of evil and deception, such as the devil as a serpent. This reflects a common mythological trope where moral or psychological corruption is externalized through physical disfigurement, serving as a visual warning or a tangible representation of internal decay. Furthermore, the evolving serpentine imagery suggests a societal tendency to associate feared female figures with archetypal symbols of evil, reinforcing negative stereotypes. At the heart of Lamia's actions lies profound psychological torment. Her insanity is a direct consequence of the loss of her children. She is consumed by an overwhelming grief and an intense envy for other mothers who still possess their children. This consuming envy fuels her compulsion to kidnap and devour infants, an act described as a grim reflection of what she had lost herself. Her gruesome actions serve as a stark warning about the devastating effects of jealousy and grief, and the potential for darkness that can emerge from even the most beautiful beings when consumed by sorrow and fury. The Child Eater and Seductress. Evolution of Lamia's monstrous nature from antiquity. Lamia's story was widely employed as a didactic tool. Athenian mothers and nannies invoked her name as a boogeyman to frighten naughty children into good behavior. The Roman poet Horace, in his Ars Poetica, cautions against overly fantastical narratives, referencing the impossibility of drawing a live boy out of a Lamia's belly, indicating that such a nurse's tale was a common, if gruesome, element of folklore. She was often synonymous with other bogey figures like Mormo and Jello. Lamia's legend, however, did not remain static. It evolved to encompass a group of child-devouring spirits known as the Lamia. This transition from a singular, named creature to a collective of entities could be interpreted as a cultural adaptation designed to increase fear and portray, or as a more widespread and pervasive menace. The Lamia are described as possessing vampiric tendencies and are often considered synonymous with the Empuzai, who were known for seducing young men to satisfy their sexual appetites before feeding on their flesh. To this generalization of a singular figure into a class of monsters indicates a process of mythologization where specific narratives become templates for broader categories of supernatural beings, thereby enhancing the myth's reach and ability to instill widespread fear or convey generalized moral lessons. A pivotal development in Lamia's portrayal is the emergence of her seductive, vampiric qualities. Flavius Philostratus's Life of Apollonius of Tyana is a key source for this aspect, describing Lamia as a fiend who takes the form of a beautiful woman to seduce young men and then devour them. This narrative profoundly influenced John Keats's famous poem, Lamia. This seductive aspect becomes a prominent feature, with Lamia luring men to their doom after satisfying her sexual appetite. She is frequently associated with other female demons, such as the Empuzai and Sirens, The thematic shift from primarily child-eating to seducing men is interpreted as a reflection of the underlying gender politics of antiquity, which frequently linked femininity with monstrosity. Lamia's monstrous qualities are constructed around her gender, with her child-slaying nature representing a reversal of the mother figure that produces life. This narrative taps into male fears about women failing to live up to patriarchal standards of motherhood or rejecting this role entirely. Furthermore, her seductive predatory behavior embodies male fears about female sexuality and its potential to ensnare and destroy men. The concept of fluidity and hybridity associated with the female body, particularly its reproductive capacities, was often perceived as a mystery and a threat to the male social order, a fear that found expression in the proliferation of female hybrid monsters, like Lamia. This demonstrates how myths are dynamic cultural artifacts that adapt to reflect and reinforce its prevailing societal anxieties and gender norms. The shift in Lamia's victims and methods reveals a deeper cultural preoccupation with controlling female power and sexuality, casting women who deviate from prescribed roles as monstrous. The evolution into a general term for a class of phantoms that stole children and mutilated them, and later seduced men, also aligns with the Christian Church's use of Lamia to warn against certain behaviors, with Pope Gregory I claiming she represented heresy and hypocrisy, symbolic depths, grief, monstrous femininity, and societal anxieties. Lamia's core tragedy stems from the profound loss of her children, which drives her to madness and a vengeful compulsion to devour the children of others. She embodies the devastating effects of jealousy and grief, serving as a stark warning about this potential for darkness that resides in even the most beautiful beings when consumed by sorrow and fury. The interpretations of Lamia's monstrous femininity are deeply rooted in patriarchal fears. Her transformation into a monster is inextricably linked to her gender. Her child-slaying nature is presented as a reversal of the mother figure that produces life, directly challenging patriarchal standards of motherhood. This reflects male anxieties about women failing to fulfill or rejecting the maternal role entirely.